The holographic message flickered to life in the United Earth Command Center. A massive reptilian face filled the screen, its scaled skin shimmering with colors that shifted between green and gold. Yellow eyes, cold and calculating, stared out from the projection as if looking directly at every human watching. "People of Earth," the creature began, its voice deep and resonant even through the translation software. "I am High Archon Velmore, Supreme Commander of the Talon Galactic Empire. For 20 years we have observed your species. You are young, primitive, and alone in this vast galaxy. We have conquered 4,000 worlds across 1,000 years. You cannot stand against us." Captain Jiwon Park stood rigid in her uniform, watching the message alongside 24 other officers. Her hands were clasped behind her back, but her jaw was tight. She had been expecting this moment for years. The alien continued. "We offer you one chance. Submit to the Empire. Become our subjects. Your leaders will step down, and Talon governors will guide your world into civilization. Refuse and we will destroy you completely. You have 7 days to give us your answer." The message ended. The room remained silent for a long moment. Finally, Fleet Admiral Doyen Choi cleared his throat. "Well, that was direct." Ambassador Minho Kim, the senior diplomat present, rubbed his temples. "They really think we'll just surrender. After everything we've prepared." Jiwon turned to face the room. "Permission to speak, sir?" Admiral Choi nodded. "Go ahead, Captain." "They're arrogant," Jiwon said. 20 years of watching us, and they still don't understand what they're looking at. They see our old ships, our outdated weapons, and they think that's all we have. They have no idea what Engineer Suna and her team have built." A younger officer, Commander Hyunwoo Nam, stepped forward. "Our intelligence reports confirm they've only seen what we wanted them to see. Every observation post they found was one we let them find. The real facilities are still hidden." Admiral Choi walked to the central table where a holographic display of Earth and the surrounding solar system rotated slowly. "The World Council meets in 3 hours. They'll want recommendations from military command." "What do we tell them?" Minho spoke up. "We tell them the truth. We can win this war. Maybe not easily, but we can win." 3 hours later, the World Council chamber was filled to capacity. Representatives from every nation sat in their designated seats, while President Jiho Ro stood at the central podium. The tension in the room was thick enough to cut with a knife. "Members of the Council," President Ro began, his voice calm despite the circumstances. "You have all seen the Talon ultimatum. Before we discuss our response, Admiral Choi will brief us on our military capabilities." The Admiral stepped forward, and the main screen shifted to show detailed schematics of spacecraft. 20 years ago, first contact with the Talons made one thing clear. They were evaluating us as a potential target. So we began the most elaborate deception in human history. The screen showed older, clunky-looking ships. These are what the Talons have seen. Slow, inefficient vessels with basic weapons. We made sure they found these during their observations. We even staged military exercises using outdated technology. The image changed to sleek, deadly warships that looked nothing like the previous vessels. These are our real ships. 50 capital ships built in hidden facilities on the dark side of the moon and in deep space. Engineer Suna Lee developed propulsion systems that make our ships twice as fast as Talon vessels. Our weapons use principles they've never encountered. A representative from the European Alliance raised her hand. "How can you be certain our technology is superior? They've conquered thousands of worlds." Engineer Suna Lee, a small woman with sharp eyes and oil-stained hands, stood up. "Because they stopped innovating centuries ago. When you conquer everyone you meet, you stop expecting surprises. Their shields are designed to stop energy weapons like theirs. Our weapons work differently. We've run simulations thousands of times. Their shields will fail in seconds against our guns." Another representative spoke up. "What about numbers? How many ships will they send?" Commander Hyunwoo Nam pulled up fleet projections. "Intelligence suggests an invasion fleet of approximately 300 vessels. They'll want overwhelming force to make a statement." Worried murmurs spread through the chamber. 300 against 50? Those odds are terrible." Admiral Choi raised his hand for silence. "Commander Nam has more to brief." Hyunwoo stepped forward. "For 15 years, we've been placing stealth observation platforms throughout their empire. They never detected a single one. We know their fleet compositions, supply routes, communication codes, and tactical doctrines. We've studied every battle they've fought for the last century." The screen showed the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. "We've also modified the battlefield. 400 asteroids have been hollowed out, and converted into hidden weapons platforms. When their fleet enters our system, they'll be flying into a trap that took us a decade to prepare. President Rowe looked out across the council. The question before us is simple, but the consequences are enormous. Do we submit to alien rule or do we fight for our freedom? The debate lasted 2 hours. Some argued for negotiation, trying to buy time. Others insisted that any delay would only let the Talons prepare better. But in the end, when the vote was called, the result was overwhelming. Humanity would fight. Ambassador Min-ho Kim sat in the recording studio preparing Earth's response. He had drafted and redrafted the message a dozen times. Finally, he settled on simple truth. The camera activated. Min-ho looked directly into it, knowing this message would reach across light years to the Talon homeworld. Hi Archon Velmore, I am Ambassador Min-ho Kim, speaking on behalf of the United Earth Government and all humanity. We have received your ultimatum and considered it carefully. He paused, letting the weight of the moment settle. Our answer is no. We will not submit. We will not surrender. We will not bow to threats or intimidation. You claim to have observed us for 20 years, but you have learned nothing about who we are. Humanity has survived ice ages, plagues, world wars, and countless disasters. We have never surrendered our freedom, and we never will. Min-ho leaned forward slightly. You have made a terrible mistake. You assumed we were weak because we are young. You assumed we were unprepared because we seemed primitive. You were wrong on both counts. If you choose to attack, you will learn just how wrong you were. This is your only warning, High Archon. Leave our system in peace, or face consequences beyond your imagination. Choose wisely. The message was transmitted through quantum communication arrays, reaching Talon space almost instantaneously. The response came 2 days later. The Talon invasion fleet was already en route. Captain Ji-won Park stood on the bridge of the ESS Indomitable, humanity's flagship. Through the viewing ports, she could see Jupiter's massive bulk in the distance. Arrayed around her ship were 49 other human warships, positioned in what appeared to be a desperate defensive formation. Captain, her sensor officer called out. Long-range detection has the Talon fleet. 312 vessels approaching in standard invasion formation. Ji-won studied the tactical display. The Talons were bunched together, confident in their superior numbers. They weren't even trying to spread out or take defensive positions. They expected this to be easy. All ships maintain current positions, she ordered. Let them think we're scared. Let them come in close. From his hidden command post on Ganymede, Commander Hyunwoo Nam watched the approaching fleet. His special operations teams were positioned throughout the solar system, ready to activate the hidden weapons platforms. Captain Park, all trap elements are ready. Just give the word. The Talon fleet crossed into the inner solar system. High Archon Velmore's face appeared on every human ship's screen simultaneously. The alien's expression was smug, almost bored. Human fleet, this is your final chance. Power down your weapons and surrender. We will be merciful if you submit now. Ji-won smiled coldly. High Archon, you were warned. You chose not to listen. Now you'll learn what happens when you threaten humanity. She opened the fleet-wide channel. All ships execute Operation Hammer. Show them what we really are. The trap was sprung. The asteroid belt erupted with light and fire. 400 hidden platforms activated simultaneously. Their weapon ports opening like the eyes of sleeping giants. Energy beams and missiles launched from every direction, creating a web of destruction that the Talon fleet flew directly into. All platforms firing. Commander Hyunwoo Nam reported from his command post. Target priorities are loaded, focusing on their capital ships first. The Talons barely had time to react. Their shields, designed to stop conventional energy weapons, flickered and failed within seconds, as humanity's unconventional weaponry tore through them. The first dozen Talon ships exploded before they could even sound battle alerts. High Archon Velmore's face on the communication screen shifted from smugness to shock. What is this? Impossible! Our sensors detected no weapons platforms. Captain Ji-won Park didn't bother responding. All ships, full attack speed. Execute pattern Delta 7. The ESS Indomitable surged forward and the Talon crews got their next surprise. Human ships accelerated at rates that should have been impossible for vessels their size. Engineer Sunali's revolutionary propulsion systems pushed the ships to speeds the Talons had only seen in small fighters, not capital warships. The human fleet scattered into attack formations, each ship moving independently but coordinating perfectly. They had practiced these maneuvers 10,000 times in simulation. Now in real combat, the movements were flawless. Weapons range in 15 seconds, Jiwan's tactical officer announced. Target their command ship, Jiwan ordered. I want Velmore to watch his fleet die around him before we take him down. The Indomitable's main guns opened fire. The directed energy weapons that Engineer Suna had developed used principles the Talons had never encountered. Instead of trying to overwhelm shields with raw power, the weapons operated on frequencies that shields weren't designed to block. The beams passed through Talon shields as if they weren't there, striking hull armor directly. A Talon battlecruiser exploded as the Indomitable's weapons carved through its reactor core. Nearby, other human ships were having similar success. The technological advantage was even greater than projected. Admiral Doyun Choi watched from Earth's orbital command center, observing the battle through real-time feeds. Status report on our fleet. All ships operational, an officer reported. Minor shield damage on the Defiant and the Resolute. No significant harm. Enemy losses at 42 ships and climbing. Choi nodded grimly. The plan was working perfectly, but he took no joy in the slaughter. War was brutal even when you were winning. Make sure our people don't get overconfident. Keep them sharp. In the asteroid belt, the Talon fleet was in complete chaos. Their tight formation, meant to demonstrate their overwhelming power, had become a death trap. Ships collided trying to evade fire from the hidden platforms. Their commanders screamed conflicting orders trying to organize a response. Reform formation Beta 9, one Talon commander ordered. No, scatter and engage independently. Another countermanded. All ships retreat to the outer system. A third shouted. High Archon Velmore finally managed to assert control. All vessels execute emergency scatter. Break formation and engage the human ships in individual combat. But it was already too late. The human fleet had carved deep into the Talon ranks, and the hidden platforms controlled the entire battlefield. Everywhere the Talons turned, they faced human weapons. Commander Hyunwoo Nam coordinated the platforms with surgical precision. Group Alpha, focus fire on those cruisers trying to flank. Group Beta, cut off their retreat path. Group Gamma, support the Indomitable's attack run. The platforms responded instantly, their targeting computers working in perfect sync. The asteroid belt had become the most dangerous place in the solar system for the Talon invaders. Captain Jiwan Park pursued a cluster of enemy destroyers that were trying to escape toward Mars. Stay with them. Don't let any ships get away to report back to the Empire. Her weapons officer locked onto the targets. 3 destroyers in range, firing. The Indomitable's guns spoke again. 1 destroyer exploded immediately. The second took critical damage and began venting atmosphere. The third tried to dodge, but a human frigate, the ESS Relentless, intercepted it and finished it off. Captain, the flagship is trying to run, her sensor officer reported. It's heading out system at maximum speed. Jiwan smiled coldly. Set pursuit course. I want that ship. The Indomitable broke away from the main battle and raced after High Archon Velmore's massive flagship. The chase led them past Mars, through the gap between the orbital platforms and toward the outer system. Engineer Suna Lee's voice came through on a private channel. Captain, I'm monitoring your pursuit. The flagship is pushing its engines beyond safe limits. They're desperate. Can we catch them? Jiwan asked. Already done. I'm routing extra power to your engines. You'll overtake them in 8 minutes. Jiwan watched the tactical display as the gap between ships closed. She could imagine Velmore on his bridge, finally understanding the magnitude of his mistake. The mighty Talon Empire had underestimated humanity completely. The Indomitable pulled alongside the flagship near Saturn's orbit. The massive rings of the gas giant provided a spectacular backdrop to the confrontation. Jiwan opened a communication channel. High Archon Velmore's face appeared on screen. His scales had lost their shimmer and his eyes showed pure fear. Don't destroy the ship. I surrender. We surrender. You were warned, Jiwan said quietly. You came here expecting to enslave us. Instead, you found warriors. Now you'll watch the price of your arrogance. She gestured to her communications officer, who split the screen to show the ongoing battle. The Talon fleet was being systematically destroyed. Their 300 ships were down to less than 100 and the number kept dropping. Your empire sent its best, Jiwan continued. 300 warships to conquer one primitive world. And we're destroying you with 50 ships and some hidden platforms. What does that tell you about who's actually primitive? Velmore slumped in his command chair. Around him, Talon officers stared at their displays in horror as their fleet died. How? Velimore asked weakly. How did we not know? 20 years of observation. You saw what we wanted you to see, Jiwan replied. Every piece of old technology, every outdated ship, every clumsy military drill. All carefully staged. You thought you were watching primitives fumble toward spaceflight. You were actually watching us prepare to destroy you. Back in the main battle, Admiral Choi received reports of surrender attempts from various Talon ships. What are your orders, sir? Several enemy vessels are powering down weapons and requesting mercy. Choi considered carefully. Accept surrenders, but keep them under heavy guard. Disable their engines and communications. I want prisoners we can question, but I don't want them able to warn the Empire about what happened here. The battle wound down over the next hour. Of the 312 Talon ships that entered the Sol system, only 15 remained intact. All 15 had surrendered. The rest were debris floating in the cold vacuum of space. Human casualties were minimal. 41 personnel injured across the fleet, most from minor equipment malfunctions during the high-speed maneuvers. Not a single ship was destroyed. Not one life lost. Captain Jiwan Park brought the Talon flagship back to the main fleet under guard. High Archon Velimore and his crew were transferred to human holding facilities on the moon. The prisoners were stunned, broken. They had expected to conquer Earth in days. Instead, they had suffered the worst military defeat in Talon history. Ambassador Minho Kim prepared another message to the Talon Empire. This one would be very different from the last. Talon Empire, I am Ambassador Minho Kim. Your invasion fleet has been destroyed. Of 312 ships, only 15 survive, and they are our prisoners. High Archon Velimore is captured. Your attempt to conquer Earth has failed completely. He paused, letting that sink in. But this is not the end. This is only the beginning. You threatened humanity. You came to enslave us. Now you will face the consequences. We are not interested in apologies. We are not interested in negotiation. We will accept only one thing: your complete and total surrender. The Talon Empire ends now. Either you submit to our terms or we will come to your worlds and force you to submit. You wanted to see what humanity is capable of. Now you will learn. This war is far from over. The message was broadcast across Talon space. 4,000 worlds heard it. Countless conquered species heard it, and for the first time in their 1,000-year history, the Talons knew real fear. On Earth, President Jiho-Ro addressed the population. Today, humanity faced its greatest test and emerged victorious. But this is not a time for celebration. We have won a battle, but the war continues. The Talon Empire must be stopped, not just from threatening us, but from threatening anyone. We will carry this fight to them. Fleet Admiral Doyen Choi began reorganizing the military for offensive operations. Commander Hyunwoo Nam pulled together intelligence for strikes on Talon facilities. Engineer Suna Lee started production on more ships, more weapons, and Captain Jiwan Park looked out at the stars, knowing that soon she would be leading humanity's fleet into enemy territory. The galaxy was about to learn what happened when you threatened humanity. The Talons had refused to listen to warnings. The Talon homeworld received news of the invasion fleet's destruction 3 days after the battle. The Imperial Council chamber erupted into chaos as the scattered transmissions from survivors told the impossible story. 300 ships lost, High Archon Velimore captured, humanity victorious. Warlord Kratos, second in command of the Talon military, stood before the council. His scales were dark with stress, a physical sign of agitation among his species. This cannot be accurate. 300 ships destroyed by 50 primitive vessels? Impossible. The data doesn't lie. Intelligence Director Shakur replied grimly, pulling up holographic battle footage from the few escape pods recovered. The humans had technology we didn't detect, weapons we've never seen, and they knew exactly where our fleet would be. The council members watched in stunned silence as the footage showed human ships moving at impossible speeds, their weapons cutting through Talon shields like they weren't there. The hidden asteroid platforms appeared from nowhere, turning the asteroid belt into a killing field. How many of our ships escaped to report back? One council member asked. None, Shakur said quietly. Every ship was either destroyed or captured. The humans made sure no one could warn us about their capabilities. Emperor Tholvar, who had taken temporary control after Velmore's capture, slammed his clawed hand on the table. Then we send more ships, 1,000 vessels. 10,000! We crush them with pure numbers. Warlord Kratos shook his head. My Emperor, there's more. Long-range sensors have detected human ships leaving their system. They're not waiting for us to attack again. They're coming for us. On the bridge of the ESS Indomitable, Captain Ji-won Park reviewed the mission parameters one final time. Her ship led a battle group of 12 vessels, all equipped with the latest weapons and packed with intelligence about Talon military installations. Target is the shipyard complex in the Velkara system, she told her officers. Intelligence Officer Seo Jin-bae has confirmed it's one of their primary construction facilities. 48 capital ships under construction, plus support facilities for 300 smaller vessels. Lieutenant Seo Jin-bae, a young officer with sharp analytical skills, pulled up detailed schematics. The facility is lightly defended. They never expected to be attacked in their own territory. 6 patrol ships, minimal orbital weapons platforms. The shipyard itself has no defensive capabilities. Time to target? Ji-won asked. 18 hours at current speed, her navigation officer replied. We'll arrive in their night cycle. Optimal surprise conditions. Admiral Do-yoon Choi's voice came through from Earth. Captain Park, remember the rules of engagement. Military targets only. No civilian casualties if avoidable. We're not conquerors. Understood, Admiral, Ji-won replied. We hit their military capabilities and leave. Clean and precise. The journey through hyperspace gave Ji-won time to think. Humanity was now the aggressor, striking into enemy territory. But it was necessary. Every day the Talons had military shipyards operating. Was another day they could build a new fleet to attack Earth. The only way to ensure humanity's safety was to eliminate the Talon threat completely. 18 hours later, the human battle group dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Velkara system. The massive shipyard complex hung in orbit around a green-tinted gas giant, lit up by work lights as thousands of Talon workers continued their shifts. All ships, weapons hot, Ji-won ordered. Target the military vessels first, then the construction facilities. Remember, we're sending a message. The human ships struck with devastating speed. The 6 Talon patrol ships were destroyed in the first minute of combat. The orbital weapons platforms managed to fire a few shots before being obliterated. Then the real destruction began. The Indomitable's guns targeted the partially built capital ships in their construction berths. One by one, years of work vanished in explosions of fire and metal. The other human ships systematically destroyed every military structure in the facility. Within 20 minutes, the shipyard was a total loss. Billions of credits in ships and equipment reduced to scrap. The Talon's ability to build new warships in this sector eliminated completely, and remarkably, not a single civilian worker was harmed. The human weapons were precise enough to destroy military targets while leaving the worker habitats untouched. As quickly as they arrived, the human ships jumped back to hyperspace, disappearing before Talon reinforcements could arrive. The attack on Velkara was only the beginning. Captain Yuna Kang led another battle group to destroy a major weapons depot in the Korthos system. Commander Hyunwoo Nam personally led special forces teams to infiltrate and sabotage 3 communication relay stations, blinding Talon military coordination in an entire sector. Each strike was surgical, precise, and devastating. The humans hit military targets and vanished before the Talons could respond. And with every attack, the message became clearer. Humanity knew everything about the Talon military infrastructure, and they could strike anywhere, anytime. Intelligence Officer Seo Jin-bae worked around the clock, analyzing data from the hidden observation posts that had been secretly placed throughout Talon space over the past 15 years. We have complete maps of their military installations across 400 systems, he reported to Admiral Choi. Every shipyard, every weapons facility, every command center. They have no secrets from us. How are the Talons responding? Choi asked. Chaos, Seojin replied with a thin smile. Their military is trying to defend everything at once, which means they're defending nothing effectively. Warlord Kratos is pulling ships from border systems to protect core worlds, but that's leaving their conquered territories vulnerable. This last point was crucial. The Talon Empire ruled over hundreds of conquered species, kept in line by military force and fear. With Talon ships withdrawing to protect their own worlds, the subject species saw an opportunity. On the world of Drexnor, a species called the Drexians rose in rebellion. They had been conquered by the Talons 200 years ago, and forced into servitude ever since. When the Talon garrison ships withdrew to defend the homeworld, the Drexians struck. Similar rebellions erupted across the Empire. Species that had been crushed under Talon rule for centuries saw their oppressors weakened and afraid. They seized the moment. The Empire began to fracture from within. Emperor Tholvar watched his domain crumble in real time. How many worlds are in rebellion? 43 systems and counting, Warlord Krathos reported. The subject species see us as weak. They think this is their chance for freedom. Send ships to suppress the rebellions, Tholvar ordered. We can't, Krathos said bluntly. Every ship we send to suppress a rebellion is a ship that can't defend against the humans. And the humans keep hitting us. They're destroying our military infrastructure faster than we can rebuild it. On Earth, President Jiho Ro met with Ambassador Minho Kim and Admiral Choi to discuss the next phase of operations. The Empire is collapsing, Ro said. The rebellions are spreading. If we keep the pressure on, the Talons will break within months. But at what cost? Minho asked. The rebellions are getting violent. Some of the subject species are taking revenge on Talon civilians. We're causing instability across hundreds of worlds. Choi nodded thoughtfully. We need to show that we're different from the Talons. We're not conquerors. We're liberators. Then we change our strategy, Ro decided. Engineer Suna, how quickly can we build ships designed for humanitarian aid rather than combat? Engineer Suna Lee, attending via video link from her design facility, considered the question. We can convert some of our construction capacity. Medical ships, supply vessels, infrastructure support. 2 months to have the first wave ready. Do it, Ro ordered. We'll send a message to the rebelling worlds. Humanity will support their independence. We'll provide medical aid, food, and protection. Show them that freedom means more than just destroying your oppressors. The new strategy was implemented immediately. Commander Eunji Song, chosen for her diplomatic skills and military competence, was put in charge of the humanitarian mission. Her fleet would go to newly liberated worlds and help them establish stable governments. The first world they visited was Drexnor. Commander Eunji's ships arrived not with weapons ready, but with medical supplies, food, and engineers. The Drexians, expecting another conqueror, were stunned when the humans offered help instead of domination. We're not here to rule you, Eunji told the Drexian leaders. We're here to help you rule yourselves. Humanity fights for freedom, not empire. The Drexians accepted the help cautiously at first. But as human medical teams treated their wounded and human engineers helped rebuild damaged infrastructure, trust grew. Within weeks, Drexnor became a strong ally of Earth. The pattern repeated across dozens of worlds. Humanity struck Talon military targets, and when subject species rebelled, humans arrived with aid and support. The contrast with Talon rule couldn't be more stark. Back on the Talon homeworld, Emperor Tholvar faced the Imperial Council. We are losing this war, not just militarily but politically. The humans are turning our empire against us. We could negotiate, Intelligence Director Shakor suggested carefully. Perhaps offer the humans a treaty. We leave them alone, they stop attacking us. The surrender message from Emperor Tholvar reached Earth on a quiet morning. President Jiho Ro sat in his office, reading the formal communication for the third time. The mighty Talon Empire, rulers of 4,000 worlds for 1,000 years, was asking for peace terms. They want to negotiate face to face, Ambassador Minho Kim said, standing beside the president's desk. Tholvar himself will come to Earth. He's willing to travel to our world to discuss surrender. It's a trap, Admiral Doyen Choi warned. The Emperor doesn't travel anywhere without a massive fleet. This could be a cover for another attack. Intelligence Officer Seojin Bei shook his head, reviewing data on his tablet. Our observation posts say otherwise. The Talon military is in complete disarray. 60% of their fleet is dealing with rebellions. Another 20% is trying to guard the homeworld. They don't have the resources for an attack, even if they wanted to. The rebellions are spreading faster than we predicted, added Commander Eunji Song, who had just returned from Drexnor. 87 worlds are now in open revolt. The Empire is collapsing from the inside. Tholvar isn't coming here to attack. He's coming because he has no other choice. President Ro stood and walked to the window, looking out over the rebuilt city below. If we accept his surrender, what then? We can't rule 4,000 worlds. That's not who we are. Then we don't rule them, Minho suggested. We help them rule themselves. Every conquered species gets their freedom. The empire dissolves into independent nations. And the Talons themselves? Ro asked. They get to survive, Minho replied. On their own world, as equals to everyone else. No more empire. No more conquest. Just one species among many. Admiral Choi frowned. Some of those freed species will want revenge. The Talons have done terrible things to their subjects over the centuries. We can't protect the Talon homeworld from everyone who has a grudge. Then we make it part of the peace terms, Ro decided. A general amnesty? No revenge attacks. Anyone who breaks it faces humanity. We become the peacekeepers, not the rulers. 3 weeks later, Emperor Tholvar's ship entered Earth's solar system. Captain Ji-won Park led an escort of human vessels to meet him. The Talon Imperial cruiser was escorted to Earth orbit under heavy guard. Though no one expected trouble, Tholvar descended to Earth's surface in a small shuttle, accompanied only by Warlord Krethos and a handful of advisors. As he stepped onto the landing platform at the United Earth headquarters, he got his first look at the planet he had tried to conquer. The sky was blue, the air fresh. Buildings of glass and steel rose around him. Humans went about their business, barely glancing at the alien delegation. To them, the war was already over. Life continued. President Ro met Tholvar personally, a gesture of respect that surprised the Talon Emperor. They stood face to face, the human leader barely reaching the reptilian alien's chest, yet clearly the one in power. Emperor Tholvar, Ro said formally, welcome to Earth. I wish the circumstances were different. Tholvar bowed his head, a gesture of submission in Talon culture. President Ro, I come to offer my empire's unconditional surrender. We have been defeated, and we accept the consequences. The formal negotiations took place in the World Council chamber. The same room where humanity had voted to resist now hosted the empire's surrender. Tholvar sat across from President Ro, Ambassador Minho Kim, and Admiral Choi, with representatives from dozens of human nations present as witnesses. Let me be clear about our terms, President Ro began. The Talon Empire ends today. All conquered worlds are immediately granted independence. All Talon military forces are disbanded, except for a small defense fleet to protect your homeworld. All weapons of mass destruction are surrendered to human custody. Tholvar listened, his expression unreadable. These were harsh terms, but not as harsh as he had feared. At least his species would survive. In return, Ro continued, Earth guarantees the safety of the Talon homeworld. Any species seeking revenge against you will face humanity. We're not interested in genocide, even of our enemies. You will have the chance to live in peace. And reparations? Warlord Kratos asked. Surely you want us to pay for the damage we've caused. No, Ambassador Minho said firmly. Reparations would cripple your economy and your people for generations. That only breeds more resentment and future conflict. Instead, you will contribute technology and knowledge to help the freed worlds rebuild. You will share your scientific advances, your medical knowledge, your engineering expertise. Help them heal, and maybe you'll heal too. Tholvar looked surprised. You're not going to strip our worlds bare? Not going to enslave us as we enslaved others? No, President Ro said simply. That's not who we are. We fought for freedom, not revenge. We want a galaxy where all species can live in peace, including yours. The Emperor was silent for a long moment. Then he spoke quietly. We underestimated you completely. We saw a young species and thought you were weak. We didn't realize that youth could bring innovation. We thought our 1,000 years of history made us superior. We were fools. You were arrogant, Admiral Choi said bluntly. But you can learn from this. Your species doesn't have to be defined by conquest anymore. Find a new purpose. Build instead of destroy. The formal surrender was signed that evening. Emperor Tholvar's signature on the document officially dissolved the Talon Empire. 4,000 worlds were suddenly free, but freedom brought chaos. Without the Empire's iron grip, old conflicts between species reignited. Border disputes erupted. Some newly freed worlds fell into civil war as different factions fought for control. Commander Yoon Ji-song's humanitarian fleet couldn't be everywhere at once. Human peacekeeping forces, led by Captain Yuna Kang, deployed to the worst hotspots, trying to prevent violence while allowing worlds to determine their own futures. On the world of Terran Kal, two species that had been forced to coexist under Talon rule now fought for dominance. Captain Yuna arrived with her battle group to find cities burning and refugees fleeing in every direction. We need to stop this before it becomes genocide, she told her officers. But we can't take sides. We're here to protect civilians, not pick winners. Her ships established safe zones around the major cities, protecting refugees from both sides. Human forces physically stood between the warring factions, refusing to let either side attack the other. It was dangerous work, and several human soldiers were injured trying to maintain peace. "This is harder than fighting the Talons," one of Yuna's officers commented. "At least then we knew who the enemy was." "The enemy now is hatred and fear," Yuna replied. "And we fight it the same way we fought the Empire, by refusing to back down." Slowly, grudgingly, the fighting on Tarankal stopped. The presence of human peacekeepers, willing to defend both sides from each other, gave the warring factions time to negotiate. It took weeks, but eventually they reached a power-sharing agreement, the same pattern repeated across dozens of worlds. Human forces maintained peace while former enemies learned to coexist. It was exhausting, costly work, and there were failures. Some worlds descended into chaos despite humanity's best efforts, but more succeeded than failed. 6 months after the surrender, Ambassador Minho Kim called for a galactic conference. Representatives from 200 newly independent worlds gathered on a neutral space station. Talon representatives were invited as well, though they came with obvious nervousness. "We are here to create something new," Minho addressed the assembly. "Not an empire, but a council. A place where every world has a voice, regardless of size or power. A place where disputes are resolved with words, not weapons." The Galactic Council was formed that day. Every species that wanted a voice could join. Decisions were made by consensus when possible, by vote when necessary. And humanity, the youngest species in the room, held no special power over the others. "Wait," a representative from a freed world objected. "Humans defeated the Empire. You have the most powerful military in the galaxy. Why shouldn't you be in charge?" "Because power doesn't give you the right to rule others," President Rowe replied. "That was the Talons' mistake. We fought for freedom, which means everyone gets to make their own choices, including choices we might disagree with. But there was one special role humanity accepted: enforcer of the peace. Any world that attacked another would face human intervention. The galaxy could have freedom, but not the freedom to conquer." Engineer Suna Lee helped establish this new order by sharing human technology with the Council. Medical advances, energy systems, propulsion technology, things that had given humanity its military edge, were now offered freely to help rebuild the galaxy. "You're giving away our advantages," one Earth official protested. "What if someone uses this technology against us?" "Then we'll develop something better," Suna replied with confidence. "We didn't win because we had better weapons. We won because we refused to give up. That's not something you can copy." On the Talon homeworld, Emperor Tholvar addressed his people for the last time as Emperor. "Our empire is gone. Our age of conquest is over. I am stepping down, and we will form a democratic government like the humans have. It will be difficult. We will have to learn new ways, but we will survive." 20 years had passed since the Talon Empire's surrender. The galaxy had transformed in ways no one could have predicted. The Great Hall of the Galactic Council, a massive structure built on a neutral moon, hosted representatives from over 500 independent worlds. Ambassador Daehyun Oh, Earth's senior representative to the Council, walked through the halls with practiced ease. He was younger than the previous generation of leaders, born just before the war began. To him, the galaxy had always been free, though he knew the history well. Ambassador Oh called a Talon representative, approaching with the careful politeness that Talons now used when dealing with humans. "A moment of your time?" Daehyun stopped and nodded. "Of course, Representative Velkara. How can I help?" The Talon, a younger member of her species, gestured toward a quiet alcove. "There's a situation developing in the Outer Rim. 3 worlds are disputing mining rights to an asteroid field. Tensions are rising. We're worried it could turn violent. Has anyone violated the peace accords?" Daehyun asked. "Not yet, but the rhetoric is getting aggressive. Ships are being moved into position. We wanted to alert the peacekeeping force before it escalates." Daehyun pulled out his communication device and sent a message to the peacekeeping command. "I'll have observers dispatched immediately. Thank you for bringing this to my attention early." Velkara bowed slightly. "The Council works because we communicate." The Talon people learned that lesson the hard way. After she left, Daehyun reflected on how much had changed. Talons now served as some of the most vocal supporters of the Council. having experienced firsthand what happened when communication failed and force became the answer. On Earth, Captain Ji-won Park, now an admiral, reviewed the latest reports from the peacekeeping fleet. Her hair had gray streaks and her face showed the lines of 2 decades of service, but her eyes were still sharp. "Another border dispute," she said to her second-in-command. "The Outer Rim worlds are getting territorial. Should we deploy the full peacekeeping force?" The officer asked, "Not yet. Send a small observer group first. Sometimes just having human ships present is enough to make everyone think twice. They remember what happened when we had to actually intervene." The peacekeeping force was still primarily human, though other species contributed ships and personnel. Humanity's military, once built to defend against the Talons, now served as the galaxy's police force. It was a role they hadn't sought but had accepted as necessary. Former President Ji-ho Ro, now retired but still influential, gave a lecture at the University of Earth on the war and its aftermath. Students from a dozen different species sat in the auditorium, listening to the man who had led humanity through its greatest crisis. "The key moment wasn't when we defeated the Talon fleet," Ro explained. "It was when we decided what to do after victory. We could have become conquerors ourselves. We had the power. Instead, we chose to build something better." A young Talon student raised her hand. "But sir, why did you trust us? After everything the Empire did, why didn't you just destroy us?" Ro smiled gently. "Because destroying you would have made us no better than your Empire. We fought for freedom, not revenge. Besides, the Talon people weren't our enemy. Your Empire was." "There's a difference," the student seemed to ponder this. She had been born after the Empire's fall, grew up in a democratic Talon society, and studied at a human university. She represented the new generation that knew only peace. In the outer reaches of the galaxy, Commander Yoonji Song, still leading humanitarian missions, arrived at a newly discovered world. The species there had just developed spaceflight and had detected signals from the Galactic Council. "First contact protocol," Yoonji ordered her crew. "Remember, we're not here to dominate. We're here to welcome." The ship approached the planet carefully, broadcasting messages of peace in multiple formats. Eventually, the native species responded. Their ships were primitive compared to human technology, but they showed clever design. Yoonji smiled as she prepared the greeting. "Hello, we are the United Earth Peacekeeping Force. Welcome to the galactic community. We come in peace and we have much to share with you." This was happening more and more often. New species entering space and discovering they weren't alone. Each time, humanity made sure the first contact was peaceful, friendly. No threats, no ultimatums. Just an offer to join the council as equals. On the Talon homeworld, former warlord Kratos, now simply known as Kratos the Historian, taught at the Planetary Academy. His subject was military history, with a focus on the Empire's fall. The Empire made 3 critical mistakes, he told his students, many of whom were human exchange students learning Talon history. First, we became arrogant. We thought our past victories guaranteed future ones. Second, we stopped innovating. We used the same tactics, the same strategies for centuries. Third, and most important, we misunderstood our enemy. A human student asked, "How did the Empire misunderstand humanity?" "We thought being young meant being weak," Kratos replied. "We thought isolation meant ignorance. We saw Earth's apparent technological limitations and assumed that was all they had. We never considered that they might be deceiving us, preparing, planning. By the time we realized the truth, it was too late." He pulled up a holographic display of the battle at Jupiter. "Look at this. Perfect coordination. Hidden weapons platforms. Advanced technology. This wasn't luck. This was 20 years of careful preparation. Humanity knew we were a threat from day one and prepared accordingly. They understood us better than we understood them." Another student, a Talon, raised his hand. "Do you regret serving the Empire?" Kratos was quiet for a moment. "Every day, we caused enormous suffering across thousands of worlds. But I'm grateful for one thing. Humanity showed us there was a better way. They defeated us, but they didn't destroy us. They gave us a chance to change. Not every conquered species would have been so merciful." Back on Earth, engineer Suna Lee, now elderly but still active, unveiled her latest project. In a ceremony attended by representatives from across the galaxy, she presented plans for a new deep space exploration initiative. For too long, The known galaxy has been limited to what the Talons explored during their expansion, she announced. There are entire regions of space we've never visited, species we've never contacted. I propose a joint council initiative to explore beyond our current boundaries. Not to conquer, but to discover and befriend. The proposal was met with enthusiasm. Ships from 24 species would join the exploration fleet, combining different technologies and perspectives. It was exactly the kind of cooperation that the council was meant to foster. Admiral Jiwan Park was chosen to lead the exploration initiative. She stood in the shipyard looking at the new vessels being constructed. They were built by humans, Talons, Drexians, and half a dozen other species working together. The ultimate symbol of cooperation. Quite a change from the war days, Ambassador Minho Kim said, joining her. The old diplomat was preparing for retirement, but he wanted to see this project launch first. We went from building weapons to building exploration ships, Jiwan reflected. From preparing for war to preparing for discovery. That's progress. Do you think we'll find more hostile species out there? Minho asked. Jiwan shrugged. Probably. The galaxy is vast, but now we know how to handle it. We don't conquer. We don't submit. We defend ourselves, win if we must, and then we help our former enemies become friends. It worked with the Talons. It can work again. The exploration fleet launched 6 months later. Ships jumped into hyperspace, heading for unknown regions of the galaxy. Behind them, the Council continued its work, resolving disputes, fostering cooperation, and building a peaceful civilization. On the anniversary of the Talon surrender, a memorial was unveiled on Earth. It honored all who had died in the war, both human and Talon. Emperor Tholivar, now living quietly in retirement, attended the ceremony. Ambassador Daehyun-oh spoke at the event. 20 years ago, we faced a choice. Submit or fight. We chose to fight. But when we won, we faced an even harder choice. Become conquerors or build peace. We chose peace. This memorial honors not just those who died, but the choice we made to break the cycle of conquest and revenge. Tholivar approached the memorial and placed a traditional Talon offering at its base. My empire killed many humans, he said quietly to Daehyun, and humanity killed many Talons. But you gave us something we never gave our conquered species. You gave us forgiveness and a future. I speak for all Talons when I say we will never forget that gift. The past is important, Daehyun replied, but the future is what we make of it. The empire is gone. Now we have the council. That's a better legacy for both our species. That evening, Daehyun stood in the Earth orbital station, the same place where President Roh had once contemplated the coming war. He looked out at the stars where ships from hundreds of worlds traveled freely, trading, exploring, living in peace. His communication device chimed. It was a message from the exploration fleet. Admiral Jiwan had made contact with a new species. First contact had gone well. Another world would soon join the council.